I'm trying to time it as the tide is going out, but eventually it's going to come back. Once it does, then the clock is ticking. My name is Andres Amador. I'm best known for doing large-scale artworks on the beach.
Most artists strive to make something that might end up in a museum one day, something permanent, but not Amador. His work only lasts a few hours.
So the design will disappear, like inevitably, no questions. The tide is going to return and it's going to wash it away. And no matter how much I might want to hold on to whatever I created, built into this artwork is a letting go of the creation.
Lots of people find it calming to scratch ideas in the sand. But Amador takes this idea to the next level. Over the past 15 years, he's etched close to 1,000 awe-inspiring designs onto beaches around the world.
During low tide, I have a wet canvas that's as big as the beach will offer me, and I'll rake on that, which turns over the sand that is a bit dry on the top, but is still wet below. And so that contrast, those are the lines, those are my brush strokes.
He draws a lot of inspiration from a mathematical principle known as fractals, which are essentially patterns that repeat themselves over and over, no matter the scale.
Fractals are the mathematical way to connect to what's happening in nature. The way that I'm connecting to natural pattern is through recognizing that there is a process that's occurring. When we talk about the fractal nature, it's self-similar, so what's happening at the small level is also happening at the large level, generally speaking. And now, I might be vastly simplifying it, but really that's only because that's the way that I'm able to connect to this. And I need to keep things relatively simple so that I can keep it together for myself.
Once he comes up with a design, the trick is figuring out how to translate that idea onto a canvas that's constantly changing. Amador has a degree in environmental science and worked for years as a computer technician, but he always had artistic ambitions. In 2004, he was on vacation in Hawaii, drawing circles in the sand, when he had an epiphany.
It dawned on me that I could create designs at an enormous level by using geometry. The beach was the perfect place, and as soon as I realized that, it was off and running.
The first step in his process is choosing which style to work with.
The two major categories in my artwork I would call the geometric and the organic, but that could also be called like the classical physics and the Newtonian, where there's right angles and straight lines and prescribed dimensions versus chaos and randomness.
If he's going the geometric route, he'll start by designing the pattern in an app called Concepts.
When I'm doing the geometric work, there is built into the design a natural ending point. So maybe the largest has been maybe 200 feet across. And the more organic artwork can go on for hundreds and hundreds of feet, or tens of thousands of square feet, filling up a whole beach area, because really there's no boundary to it, so I can just keep going. The geometric is an exercise in intellectual ability. With the organic, it's emerging in the moment. There's a spontaneity that is really, it's delightful. I resonate much more with that. That said, over the years, as I've discovered more ways to engage the spectrum of the structured and the organic, now my work weaves back and forth. One of the problems with doing the geometric art is that because it's so perfect, it looks just like a stamp. People would accuse me online that I was photoshopping it in there.
One way to avoid that critique is to integrate the designs into the environment.
These days, I'm looking for one that offers features on the beach that I can engage. So just having a design on a big open expansive beach, there's not that feeling of place, that this artwork is existing within a location. So I desire to have interesting features on the beach, so rock outcrops, or a spur of the mountain that's going down into the water, or the cliffside that I can just blend into so the design gets disrupted by the landscape in some way, or it has to move around the landscape in some way that the artwork and the landscape are involved in a dialogue. So these are my main tools. Extendable rake, thinner rakes, and these are also extendable. These are for fine lines and also for a bit of marking. And then this pole here I'll be using today so that I can create guides for myself. So this is the area that I want to do the work in. I really want to include these rocks. So my first step is to determine how long this thing is going to be. For expediency, I'll be using some rope and a tape measure so that I can quickly mark out my points. From the center point, I'm going to create an outer perimeter. There really isn't a circle in this design, but I'm creating a hexagon, 6 lines coming out of the center, but really 3 straight lines that divide the circle into 6 parts, 6 pie shapes. So right now we're looking at one of the pie slices of the 6 slices that I have created. From those pie shapes, I'll start to connect some of the outer points to create what will eventually become the grid. Then I'll go to a different tool. So it's a pole with 2 nails in it, which will create a perfectly separated pathway. I'll use that to start blocking out major areas. At that point, the canvas is going to be full of crisscrossing lines everywhere. And the challenge at that point is going to be keeping it straight where I am. And then I will take my expanding rake to make thick lines. That's the place where it's very easy to get lost. It is totally like being in a maze. Once I make a mark in the sand, that mark pretty much can't go away. Almost invariably, on every piece I do, I make some mark that's wrong. So there's an error in every one of my designs.
Over the past decade, he turned his hobby into a profession. He sells prints from photos he takes with his drone. He does commissions, and he also leads workshops with other aspiring beach artists.
I would say there's 2 main challenges. There's a time constraint. So I'm very aware of the tide. When it's hit its maximum low and it's coming back, or if it's already coming back, like the time pressure of if I don't finish this soon, then a major chunk of this could get washed away. I have had many times where I'm just nearing the finish and a wave comes and just eats out huge chunks of it. And then the next challenge is to keep my steps straight, because it's easy to get lost in the process. And to be looking at my instructions, scratching my head as to what does that mean right here on the ground that I'm supposed to be doing. I can see on the paper what it means, but what does that mean right here? I've been in that situation so many times because I had a very complex design. And while I was designing, it seemed very obvious what would happen next and where that would be. But on the ground, the distance is so big that it's easy to lose track of what's happening. So keeping it together, that really is the biggest challenge ultimately. Because if you can't keep it together and you're spending your time trying to figure it out, then you're using up time. So what I try to design towards is where I minimize the places where I need to be making decisions while I'm working, and that each step is very clear, and I'm minimizing how much I need to think about it as I'm working. Even if when I complete a piece and it's perfect, it's going to go away. There's nothing I can do about it. But the process to get there is as important, or perhaps more important. And so this art has connected me to the act as it's happening and the value of focusing on that experience versus the result.